Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this September 8th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and if you can't get those two shows, go to my website. We play the replays all day long. You can just click right on there and get shows going back over 10 years regarding the Vatican-led New World Order at my website at arcticbeacon.com. Now, today is part 15 of what I call the greatest Off Broadway stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, the presidential election, or as some say, the selection, 2016. Now, I've received a number of emails on this show that I'm doing, on this series I'm doing that will last till November 8th, when the new king of America is crowned, and or it could be a queen. So this time we got a king or a queen, and we'll see what happens. But somebody emailed me, and I have to do some clarification about the presentation that I do and why I have billed it a fictional account of what's really going on. A movie, a sitcom, a stage play, depending on if you're in the live audience at all these rallies that that Trump or Clinton put on, or if you're on TV or video, it could be a movie, ongoing movie or sitcom. But somebody called to my attention that, Greg, it can't be just pure fiction, the movie you're talking about, because these things actually happen. And I started thinking about that, and I said, well, he's got a point. They do happen. So I had to think about the categories of movies that you go see. And the one that we have to put this little scenario into is the movie that they say fictional accounts based on fact. And that fits this pretty well. Fictional account, fictional account based on fact. Now, I would suggest that most of what's going on before our eyes is fiction based on a narrative that these writers of this movie want you to believe. Now, I can also suggest that it's based on historical fact that has been distorted, because they have written the history as well. So we have a real interesting scenario here. We have people believing things that are based on facts that have been distorted. So we have really a fictional world that's created based on, well, there are certain facts that are true. You have to admit that certain things are true, but the accounts given, the narrative given, is always the narrative of the producers, who I said are the Vatican and all of their secret societies and all their secular leaders working in the world for them, including Freemasons. We have the Bilderberg Club. We have all of the Knights of Malta. We have all of these organizations worldwide that spread this kind of narrative, their narrative. And it filters down even to the major actors. Well, we forgot about the writers, who are the Jesuits. We know that. They're the main educators. I call them miseducators, but they're known in the world as the great educators. And their headquarters is in Rome, and I used to walk by there when I lived there. It's at Borgo Santo Spirito 5. And their headquarters here, they're all over the place. If you want to know of their province, they got the whole country divided into kind of like 10 different quadrants, and then they have their leaders in each part of our country. But their real main headquarters, where they do a lot of writing, is Georgetown University, the first Jesuit university in America, right next to the White House. And I'd said many times, there's probably a tunnel there where they get together and they have little meeting rooms where they all figure out, okay, this is the script for the day, guys. This is what you're to say. And so these actors like Obama and Clinton, Trump, all main actors hired by them, have a script to give you. So let's just talk about this for a second. We have today the actors going to different parts of the country. One will be in Ohio, one will be in North Carolina, and they've been given their script for the day. So they've been given their script for the day, and if you're going to be in one of those rallies, you're going to be at the live Broadway stage, off-Broadway stage play. If you're going to watch it on TV, then you're going to be watching the sitcom or the movie. And if you get just the accounts on all the TV stations, those are the movie reviewers who actually are the PR department for these people. So you're getting their narrative. Now, to make this clear, I said on one of my shows that, and I got an email on this, Greg, are you selling out? You're going to vote for Trump. You've never voted in your life. And I said, no, I'm not selling out. And I realized that both of these actors work for the New World Order in one capacity or the other. And we know of Clinton. How many times have I talked about this leading actress, Hillary Clinton, in the last 15 years? I mean, she's been around for 30 years, 35 years working for them. Her mentors are Jesuits. We've gone over this millions of times. And so she is basically in the pocket of the Jesuits. They're on this kick now that they want to select a king or queen, that the first black, the first woman. What are they going to do next? They're running out of things that. Do you realize most of the people in this country, they don't care about any of this stuff. They don't care about politics. They don't care about anything. They're too busy playing Pokemon Go, that mind control game that's bringing us to a position of where it's a really weird game what these people are doing. And when you see that now technology is controlling human beings, these people walk around like zombies. And I don't play the game. I don't know all the particulars, but you'll see them on the street. And make sure that they don't bump into you, because their heads are down, and this virtual world is controlling them. And the real world really doesn't exist. In fact, I was walking my dog the other day, and I'm at the park I walk into is full of these zombies. They looked at my dog and said, oh, he's a Pokemon monster dog. And you know what? My dog was offended. And so was I. And I walked up to that person and I said, he is not a virtual dog. He is a real Alaskan Malamute. He is an honorable creature created by God. And they looked at me like, holy Christ, he's crazy. But who's crazy? Was I crazy or were they? So the point I'm trying to make is, back to Clinton and Trump, we know Clinton is in their pocket. And what is her goal? What is her role? What is the script they're writing for her? She's created chaos with ISIS. And if you look at her foreign policy that they've given her, she is probably one of the most incompetent, warmongering witches that's ever been in a position like her in our country. I mean, to run for president, it's a slap in the face of every American. She has skirted the law. She should be in jail for all of these email violations and giving national security to the rest of the world when she was Secretary of State. Then she destroyed her policies, and Obama's policies have turned the Middle East into nothing more than a powder keg, and we got all these refugees all over the world spreading terror. And so we're going to do a show just on her the script policies they've written for her, and then I'm going to show you a narrative that should be in there. Now, what about Trump? Well, he's this reality show TV guy, and let me tell you, not that much is known about him. The Jesuit connections are at this point slim. He's went to Jesuit schools. His children did. But I am convinced he's a Freemason at the highest levels, because every time he sits down, and if he does a sit-down interview and the cameras are on him, you'll see between his legs he'll make the inverted triangle pyramid with his index fingers and thumbs. Now that to me is a perfect sign of who he is. And if you don't believe they use signs and symbols in this movie, then you need to do a lot of homework. Because if you go to a Hollywood movie, you know they do there. It's filled with all the signs and symbols. They do the same thing here. So he's a Freemason working for them, and then the question comes up, which I'm trying to answer. So we're going to get to the bottom of his little game, but we know what it is. They're giving him a script of nationalism, of tough borders, of America is first, and this is, America's gone down the tubes, and really, in their movie, it really has when you looked at everything. So we have Trump playing this role of America first, and first in the world, and has to be back on the top. And you compare it to the globalist view of Clinton, and you see this kind of Hegelian dialectic going on in their narrative that they're presenting to you. So people then said, well, how could you're selling out, you're voting for one of them, really, in this kind of fictional movie that's based on some fact. And I said, no, I'm not selling out. Here's what I'm doing. I'm doing something I've never did in my life, step into that booth, and I'm going to take in this what I consider to be the worst of two evils here. And then somebody said, well, the election's fixed anyway, why bother? And I said, you got a point there, but I just want to make a point to myself that I understand this so well that I am going to vote for the guy who I think will, even if he is a New World Order minion, he may delay their plans just a little bit, and maybe their plans are going to be done differently if he's elected, if they select him. And that's then they said, well, the election's fixed. And I said, okay, how is it fixed? Do they actually manipulate the votes? Could be. Or do they present such a folly in the election that no one who believes this to be fact, can vote for him so Clinton will win, or no one could vote for Clinton so Trump will win? They can also do it that way. But here's the point. If I understand it totally, and what I mean by total is that both of them work for the script writers here, the Jesuits, and then the producers, the Vatican, all her minions, then I'm going to take the one that that will at least be a little different. I'm tired of the Clinton-Obama era. So they go back and forth. Remember, we had Bush, then they had a Democrat, then we had Reagan. Now maybe they're switching over. And so when you understand it, I thought it'd be a folly for me just to go in that booth, because I've never been in one, voting booth. And it isn't because I really don't understand the Hegelian dialectic and what I talk about here. I just thought I'd take a different approach this time to make it just a little bit more interesting for myself. Okay? Indulge me on that. So the point I'm making is that here we are, presented with this kind of movie based on some fact. And the point is that everyone that wants to get to the bottom of the story, to wipe away all of their, in a sense, their narrative with even better facts that are really what they're hiding from us. Most of the people never get a chance to do that, and I've pointed it out. Now, for example, the issue that we're on right now is one of the main points, one of the main subjects in their plot this year, and that is terrorism. You're going to hear it day in and day out till November 8th. ISIS, terrorism, people dying, Islamic terrorism, fighting Christianity, destroying the West. And you hear this every day. And I said and we did a show, the part 14 was based on the fact, if you're going to get to the bottom of this, you script writers, and then you act, give the actors a better narrative. Let them explain to us where Islam came from. And I think we did that the other day by showing that Islam was created by the script writers and was created by the producers, the Vatican. And then this idea that it is just this non-connection to the Vatican is not really giving the people the best movie they could get. Could you imagine if the actors were given a script and they actually got on and said, you know something? The Vatican created Islam. And this is what they did back in the 600s and 700s throughout history, and this is what they're doing now to try to destroy the West. And they are the ones living in our country that have done this even back during the Revolutionary War. So can you imagine if we got the true narrative? And can you imagine if then we got the true narrative about what they're doing to Christians here? Now, I've tried to find the people that want to get this part of the story into this movie. For example, one of my favorites has always been the Tony Alamo ministry. And Tony, this is a true guy, a true pastor who wanted to get to the truth, the bottom of all of their lies in this movie. And he was doing things back in the 80s that people today still don't even comprehend. I mean, his ministry and the people, that's why I bring a lot of people of his ministry on my show, so that you can listen to firsthand how Christianity is being taken apart in this country by the script writers, the Jesuits, and the producers, the Vatican, and all the agencies working for in our country. And we're supposedly supposed to be a Christian country. So Tony's narrative was, he pointed out that one, Catholicism is not Christianity. It is a pagan religion. Two, the Jesuits have been infiltrating real true Christian churches so that people don't get the Word of God through the Bible. And three, our government is allowing people or forcing upon its people a system that is pure evil. And so for his outspokenness, for doing this for, more than 40 or 50 years, they finally had to shut him up, and he's sitting in a jail cell. This is a real part of the story. But he's there on false reasons. His premise is right. They had to put him away because it would destroy everything they're doing here if it caught on to the masses, and that couldn't be allowed. And he was getting, a lot of people interested in this story. And in fact, remember, in our last episode, we presented Father Alberto Rivera, the Jesuit priest, who learned about the Vatican's role in creating Islam through secret. He was a high-level priest, Jesuit, sent to destroy Christianity by infiltrating churches, and then he finally found Christ and left and tried to tell the world. Tony's ministry was one of the first to allow him to speak in America in the 80s when none of us were even thinking in these terms. So when we talked about Alberto, what he told us in our last episode about what he learned in the Vatican, about the creation of Islam and how they're doing it today, how they're doing the exact same thing today, using that religion they created to destroy Christianity, and basically the Vatican playing both sides of the coin here. It's an amazing story. And then I talked about how, and that's why I bring certain members of his ministry on to tell us this is going on right today, and I hope that the message gets out. And it was interesting that even when I started to present this story 10 years ago, there were a number of people that backed Tony in the Christian community, and that has fallen down by the wayside because many of them did not want to stick their necks out because they realized they may be put in jail if they speak the Word of God. That's how bad it's gotten here. And I still have a lot of respect for those people that come on my show that aren't afraid of that. Now, when you talk about Alberto Rivera, he's a main character that should be presented to the American people, and this idea that we're talking about should be in this narrative movie. But what really has happened is they have taken this script and fashioned it for a reason. And the reason is, on top of using a movie that's fiction based on fact, their narrative. They've created a reality show because everyone believes what they're saying is true. Now, before, I wanted to present you an article I wrote in 2007 because I interviewed the wife of Alberto Rivera, and she categorically stated that he was poisoned and killed for this, and I'm going to get to that. But first, I think we should concentrate on a couple issues that they've presented in their narrative in the past. And that is, it's now September 8th, so we're coming on September 11th, 15 years since the Twin Towers were taken down. And we're going to go back to that and what it was like, because I got involved with the alternative. The alternative media was just getting going. People back 15 years ago were so upset with what was happening in the mainstream media that they were looking for answers. The government apparently was giving, the best story to tell is the story the government gave you about how 9/11 came down, how that day happened. And then what the media basically did to to follow the government story hook, line, and sinker. And there were a lot of people that were very, very upset about this. So many people that I remember, I was basically one of the few journalists at the time that was, I went to New York and talked to the people that were affected by this. And I can tell you right now, they didn't believe the government story 15 years ago. And I'm talking about the victims, the family members, the people that were there in New York that saw exactly what happened and then listened and said, no, I talked to the firemen. I was in the fire stations talking to these guys and said, this is not the way it happened. And what really happened was the alternative media was the only one that started to take up that cause. And so I got close watching this movie that that the mainstream media and these Jesuit writers were doing back then. I started saying, man, we got to get our narrative in here. And so I looked to the alternative media as a way to do that. And so I got myself involved with a couple of the bigger radio stations and started doing shows and talking about it and meeting most everybody that was involved in this 9/11 truth movement. And what I started to see was that the script writers were quite smart. And I didn't quite understand it at the time. But they actually put their people into the alternative media to make real truth tellers look like fools. One of their main men was Alex Jones. And I got to be, I was on his show many times because I was doing stories about 9/11. Then I got my own radio show that was right after his, and I got to know up close and personal not only that station, GCN and Alex Jones, but also the RBN network, which I was on both. And John Stadtmiller, and I think he was put there for the same reason. And the narrative that I was trying to get in by bringing on people like Tony Alamo, bringing on people like Nuri Rivera, and many others at the time that were talking about 9/11 truth, but yet starting to bring in the narrative of the Vatican, the real script writers, the real producers. Boy, did a backlash come. And what did it tell me? It told me that the producers, the writers, were smart enough to figure we got to control the alternative media for our own narrative, for the movie to progress as we want it to. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on the September 8th, 2016 day on our calendar. Okay, we're going back 15 years or so, talking a little bit about 9/11, how the alternative media works, how I, during that period of time, got involved with the alternative media at really the highest levels at the time, the two bigger stations, RBN and GCN. And what appeared on the Alex Jones Show, Jeff Rent Show, all of these shows, because I was very concerned about getting to the bottom of 9/11 without speaking about the Vatican at the time, and that was looking at the government story and comparing it to the media story that they just basically took the government story, ran with it, talking to many, many people involved in 9/11, the first responders, the victims, family members, etc., and finding that the government story had so many holes in it that it was just a piece of Swiss cheese, and when it really boiled down to it was basically an inside job. And the connections go deep and deep and deep into the prior knowledge of our government. Who are they working with? And it all boils down to the script writers now, looking back 12, 15 years, the script writers, the Jesuits, and the Vatican producers presenting this narrative that only they wanted the people in the country to believe. So the only place you could get stories like this done, I remember even going to the New York Times and questioning their reporters, and boy, did I get a stonewalled reaction there. So we know the New York Times is nothing more than a PR firm for the people we're talking about. So the only place you could get this story in was in the alternative media, and many people, if you weren't involved in it closely like I was as a journalist, figured, hey, these guys are telling the truth. Alex Jones, John Stadtmiller, all these guys are telling the truth. Well, of course, they were presenting a narrative that was giving you a lot that the mainstream media wasn't giving you, but they didn't go to the bottom of the well. They didn't want to attack, at that time, the producers, the Vatican, the Jesuits, the writers. So when I started to do that on these shows, I was attacked by them. Alex Jones at the time, who would allow me on his show, wouldn't allow me on his show. He called me crazy. Anyone that would talk about the Jesuit Vatican narrative was crazy. The Vatican were just these priests. They had no money. These are words out of his mouth. He's changed his tune a little bit now, and he's getting on the satanic Jesuit Pope story. But here's the deal. So is Hillary Clinton changing her tune. And so is Donald Trump changing his tune. Now let me explain how all of these people work together. Now back when I was learning about this, understanding, for example, when I started to hit the Vatican hard every day, John Stadtmiller had to bring out a guy named Michael Collins Piper to put on a show that would just be completely opposite than mine. He blamed everything on the Jews. And so it was a show put on to tell me that we're not going to allow this. And John even came to me and said, you're just a one-trick pony. You can't talk about the Vatican all the time. And I said, why not? Nobody else does. This story needs to be talked about. So he was protecting them. So I learned through the hard way that Jones is a gatekeeper. Most people understand it now that are really looking into these stories. Many people still don't. Still will think he's giving you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But let me tell you, they're covering for the script writers, the Jesuits, and the Vatican to this day. Now back then we're talking about, let's move forward to 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, and now, in those days, the alternative media was just getting its feet in the ground. And there weren't as many YouTubers out there. There weren't as many people involved. Many people got their news from, if they didn't trust the mainstream. And 9/11 story was the key to this. Because many people started thinking, God, the government story doesn't make sense. So I had to go to the alternative media, and through working with them, understanding, being in Austin, Texas for a while, seeing where all this money was coming from, I'm going, how are these guys making so much money? They had nice offices. Look at Alex Jones now. He's a millionaire over this stuff. And I said the reason they're doing it is because they are being controlled by, they're working for the script writers. Now, back then, there were only a few politicians that would even entertain coming on the Alex Jones show or any of the shows that were on the alternative media in these two stations, which were the biggest. Now, one was Ron Paul. Now, here's a little story about Ron Paul. He would go on the Alex Jones show. He would go on the John Stadtmiller show. He'd go on probably any show but mine. And I asked him to come on my show, but he wouldn't because he knew I was going to talk about the Vatican. And I told one of his aides, I said, listen, you're going on Alex Jones' show. I have just as, at that particular time, one of the most popular shows on RBN. I said, why don't you come on my show? And he said, I'll talk to Ron. But they weren't going to come on because they knew I was going to ask the hard questions about their boss, the Vatican and the Jesuits. Now, that's about the only politicians that would go on these shows. But today, fast forward to 2015, Alex Jones has grown into this cult figure. He's grown into this media. Anybody thinks of the alternative media, they think of him. And he works for them. Now, let me tell you how this has progressed and why Clinton and Trump would not go on my show. And I think somebody out there, since they've gone on the Alex Jones show, now listen to what I'm going to read to you. This just happened in this election cycle, in this script writing period, how we've progressed. Clinton, and I'm going to play a little clip, Clinton attacked Trump recently for appearing on the Alex Jones show, claiming that Jones, quote, said the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre were child actors and no one was actually killed there. In reality, though, folks, I know there's a lot of people, and if you look at Sandy Hook, you got to start thinking, boy, this didn't really happen the way, they are crisis actors. But in reality, Jones never claimed that nobody died at Sandy Hook. So there you go. He never claimed that, and maybe he's changed his story now. Hillary also savaged Trump for becoming embroiled in 9/11 conspiracy theories for saying that Muslims celebrated on 9/11. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to play a little clip that Clinton recently was given in a script to talk about this. And then I want to make a few comments. So here we go. Here's what Clinton recently said about that. Now, this would never have happened 15 years ago. So for her to mention it, for Trump to go on Jones, he was instructed to go on Jones's show because he knows Jones works with them. Now, if Trump can go on his show, why can't he come on mine? And somebody out there ought to just say, hey, why don't you go on Greg's show? Greg used to have a show with these stations, but he was kicked off because he was talking about the Vatican. Do you want to deal with that subject, Mr. Trump, Mr. Clinton? Do you want to put that in your narrative? They would never come on my show, and if I was still working there, they wouldn't, because they do not want to. They would get fired. Their job is to cover for the main people. And this little clip will show you how we've progressed and why Jones is connected to these people.
Listen to the radio host Alex Jones, who claims that 9/11 and the Oklahoma City bombings were inside jobs. He even said, and this really just is so disgusting, he even said the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre were child actors and no one was actually killed there.
Okay, so here we got Clinton now referring to the Alex Jones show. Now, what is Alex Jones doing? He is making many truth people, like he did to me 10 years, look like fools. Now, I will give you another little story that gets forgotten. Do you think, now this happened in 2008 or 9. I was living in a small town in Colorado at the time, and I was still doing my radio show. I was on Liberty Radio. I was only allowed to go on Christian stations. They didn't want to talk about their script writers or anybody. They didn't want to talk about the Vatican. They had to protect this side of the story, which is really the bottom of the whole ball of wax here. So what happens? I'm in a little small town, and I'm still doing my radio show, and I'm walking through the library. And here's a guy, and this is a town of 3,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. And I walk over and I tap this guy on the shoulder as a friend, and he's going, "Are you Greg Szymanski?" I go, "Yeah." And he's reading an article written by Alex Jones and his group, or listening to a video, and he says, "I didn't know you were a CIA agent." I'm going, "What are you talking about?" And he looked at me like, wow. So what Jones was actually doing was discrediting me at the time, along with Jeff Rentz and the others, because of me trying to talk about the Vatican, their boss. That's the narrative even the alternative media doesn't want to get to. Now, you're going to go to the internet now, and there's many YouTubers out there starting to get the point. But I'm just trying to show you. The only reason Trump would go on Jones is because he was instructed to do that. Now, I would say the same thing I said to Ron Paul. If you can go on his show, why can't you come on mine? And the reason would be they don't want to talk about this. Same like Ron Paul didn't want 2 years ago. So that's just an idea of how the narrative is only allowed to go in one direction, the direction of the real controllers of the New World Order, your owners, your bosses, who are telling you exactly what to think, read, and listen to, the Vatican and all of their minions. Now, getting back to one of the big plots that they're exposing today is terrorism. And as I said, we did a show just recently, the 14th, the number 14 in this series, showing that there are many people that think the Vatican connection to Islam is very strong and should be put into this movie. So what we're going to do for the last 12 minutes is play again someone else who has researched this much more than me, and will give credence and believability to what Alberto Rivera was saying. So let's listen to Walter Veith's. This is a long, I've played it before years ago, and it's good to play the first 10 or 12 minutes. Maybe I'll continue next with the next episode with this. But this is his presentation called The Islamic Connection by Walter Veith. So listen, its connection to Rome and Catholicism. Here we go.
The Islamic Connection is the name of this lecture, and it's quite a story. The Islamic religion is huge today, and it has some very fascinating features. It's a very exclusive religion. Nobody from the outside is allowed in. If there are pilgrimages to Mecca, only those of the Islamic faith are allowed to go to these pilgrimages. It is an exclusive religion. Evangelism in Islamic countries is totally forbidden. This religion has full control of the entire territory which it controls. Now, who and what is Islam? Now, I have known many people from the Islamic faith. As a professor at the university, many of my students were of the Islamic faith. And I can tell you that I have very high regard for them. They are conscientious, they are serious about their faith, they believe that they are doing the right thing, they have a very high standard of what is right and what is wrong, and they will stand for principle. These are all wonderful ideals by those propagating the Islamic faith. And they are loyal like no others. Of all my students, I can honestly say that the students that came from the Islamic faith were loyal beyond anything that I could mention. So let me pay tribute to them. You will remember that we in the lectures discussed that the Knights Templars had two aspects of their religion. The one was for the Goyim, for the uninitiated, and that, according to Morals and Dogma and all the testimonies relating to this issue, was Catholicism. So the outside world got Catholicism. The inner esoteric circle had Luciferianism. That was what happened in Catholicism. Do you think it might be possible that exactly the same thing could be happening in the Islamic faith? That there is an inner circle and an outer circle? That the inner circle has one faith and the outer circle gets Goyim religion, the Islamic faith? And that controlling them both is a central organization which is seated where? Well, the Bible says that it is seated in Rome and nowhere else. The Bible says that the beast is Roman. It comes out of the Roman Empire, and Islam does not come out of the Roman Empire. The controlling force in the Bible is Rome. This is an interesting point. So if we look at this tremendous rival religion, which in numbers equals Catholicism, what is its origin and why is it there? These are very important questions. This is a mighty, mighty religion. And millions of people make the pilgrimages to Mecca, where they worship at the shrine of Muhammad. What a privilege it is for them to make the pilgrimage. There's another religion which also propagates pilgrimages, and that is Catholicism. So you have pilgrimages to Lourdes and the Marian sites and to Fatima. Pilgrimage is a symbol of the great pagan religions of the past as well. Now, who was Muhammad? Muhammad Mustafa was born in 570 AD and he died in 632 AD. He fled to Medina in 622 AD after Khadija's death. Now, who was Khadija? Muhammad married Khadija when he was 25 and she was 40 years old. Her cousin Varakwa was a Roman Catholic and she came from a Roman Catholic convent. So we could say she was a Roman Catholic nun. She was super rich. She lived in a convent and she had the whole of the economy basically in her hand, and she employed this young man, Muhammad, whom she then also married. Muhammad marched on Mecca in 630 AD, 2 years before he died and 4 years before Omar became Caliph, and the Quran was compiled in 650 AD, and Muhammad, who couldn't write himself, had a scribe to write down what he saw and what he heard. And the Quran is different apparently from all other religious writings because it was a directly dictated book. So it is not just transcribed by a prophet, so they teach, but is the very word of God, and therefore it must always remain in its original Arabic language. That is what is taught in the Islamic religion. The symbol of Islam is the sickle moon and the star within the sickle moon. Now, where does this symbol come from? And who is Allah? Well, let's go to some interesting quotes, also from encyclopedias of religion and etc. Allah, he was the moon god who married the sun goddess. Together they produced 3 goddesses who were called the daughters of Allah. These 3 goddesses were called Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. The Encyclopedia of Religion mentions that Allah is a pre-Islamic name corresponding to the Babylonian Bel. Fascinating. So this is an ancient pagan religion, and Bel, or Baal, is the deity. We read in Morals and Dogma, page 451, the Arabian word Aldebaran means the foremost or leading star, and it could only have been so named when it did precede or lead all others. The year then opened with the sun in Taurus and the multitude of ancient sculptures both in Assyria and Egypt, wherein the bull appears with lunette or crescent horns, and the disk of the sun between them are direct allusions to important festivals of the first new moon of the year, and there was everywhere an annual celebration of the festival of the first new moon when the year opened with Sol, the sun, and Luna, the moon, in Taurus, and the symbol of Taurus is that one over there. The crescent and disk combined always represent the conjunctive sun and moon. That means basically the male-female deity, male-female aspect. Well, it was worshipped, as we see over here, adoration of the celestial cow, Mehet Veret, there's the all-seeing eye, the eye of Osiris. Here are the horns, there is the disc in the horns, and it also represented the plunging of the sun god into the womb of the mother to be born by Isis. So the horns are also a representation of the moon, the sickle moon. So in later religions, or from Babylon itself, Assyrian style, there you have the half moon with a solar disk in it. The same over here, enlarged. Note that this is Baal Hadad, the birth of the sun. If we go to Mesopotamia, we'll find the old symbol of Baal and Bel was exactly the same, the half moon and the star in it, representing the birth of the sun. Isis and Osiris, the male-female aspect. So this would be Ashtoreth and Tammuz, or Isis and Horus, the male-female. The same you find in Egyptian, as we have already discussed it. This is Baal worship, this is Lucifer worship in his male-female form. Now, the papacy has exactly the same thing, because the Pope is today the representative of the Babylonian religion. So when he says the Mass, he has a round wafer disc, its roundness coming as a symbol of Baal. And after a Mass, it is placed in a monstrance, which is a half moon. So then you have the birth of the Son, and you have it symbolized in this form. Here's another monstrance in which the host is placed representing the birth of the Son. So Catholicism uses the symbol of the half moon with the sun or the star in it. Here's a Roman Catholic church in Germany, and it has this interesting clock on it, which I photographed. There's the moon, and there is the star. And this particular star here has 8 points. And as this clock moves round, of course, every time, the long arm and the short arm intercalate, you have the birth of the sun god. Boom, Baal Hadad, Baal Hadad, Baal Hadad, every now and then, every hour of the day. Very interesting. So the symbol of Catholicism is the moon and the star, hidden, of course, in many other symbols as well. We find Islamic symbols in the strangest places. Let us go to the state of Louisiana, and here's a police car of New Orleans, and we see the Islamic symbol on it. Here is the supervisor's car. You can see it quite clearly. Now that would be all fine and well, but let me take you to the Church of the Lady of Guadalupe in New Orleans. Here is the symbol on the front of the altar. Here is the typical cave where they have Mary within the cave. Inside this little cave chapel, you have Mary inside the grotto, a typical pagan symbol.
Okay, so we're going to have to break it off there. I wish I had more time, but we're going to play more of this because I played it years ago, and it's good to relive, to go over this again. But basically, you look at the signs and symbols. Islam and the Catholic Church use the same thing. Another reason why we should put into the narrative that the Vatican most likely created this enemy of the West right now, and they want a huge conflict to occur for their benefit. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.